Okay, so we're diving into a really gripping story today. It's a non-fiction account from a remote Japanese island, and it asks a pretty chilling question. Do we actually create the very monsters we end up condemning?
Our story starts back in 2019. Picture this. On the small, isolated island of Tsushima, a car suddenly plunges into the dark, cold waters of a fishing harbor. The driver inside, a man celebrated by his entire community. He doesn't make it out.
And this wasn't just anybody. This was a man named Nishiyama Yoshiharu. He was a superstar employee at the local agricultural co-op, JA Tsushima. I mean, he wasn't just some salesman. He was an absolute institution, a legend with this almost mythical status on the island. But, and this is a huge but, behind this larger-than-life myth was a secret of just staggering proportions, an embezzlement scandal worth at the very least 2.2 billion yen. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 15 million US dollars.
No suicide note was ever found, and his death left behind this tidal wave of questions. The whole community was just left grappling with this mystery that was clearly so much more than a simple financial crime. You know, was it a tragic accident? Or was it something way, way darker?
So to really understand what happened here, we've got to understand the man himself and the world he lived in. Who was Nishiyama Yoshiharu, really? And how in the world did he end up holding such incredible power on an island of just 30,000 people?
The setting is absolutely key to this whole thing. Tsushima is geographically and socially isolated. And in that kind of closed society, your reputation, your personal relationships, they carry this immense weight that's honestly hard for most of us to even imagine.
And this is so important. The book we're pulling this from, it doesn't just paint Nishiyama as some simple villain. No, not at all. It portrays him as this deeply complex figure, a man who was trapped by the very same expectations and the very system that lifted him up to legendary status in the first place.
All right, so let's get into the crime itself. The sheer scale of it is breathtaking, for sure. But how it all happened? Well, that reveals some really deep, systemic cracks in the organization he worked for and in the community that basically worshipped him.
He wasn't just going to work every day. He was operating inside a total pressure cooker. His organization, the JA, demanded almost superhuman results with these insane sales quotas. And yeah, success meant huge rewards, but it also meant the entire organization became totally dependent on him. Because he was their hero, their god. All the normal checks and balances that should have been there, they just melted away.
And this brings us to what is maybe the most provocative argument in the whole story. Nishiyama did not act in a vacuum. He was enabled by what the author calls a system of unconscious complicity. Basically, a situation where everyone, without ever explicitly agreeing to it, helps create a really bad outcome.
This table just lays it out perfectly. You've got three key players in this silent conspiracy. First, you have the organization, driven by quotas, which led to almost no oversight. Then you have the community, motivated by pride in their local hero, which resulted in this kind of hero worship where no one could criticize him. And then there's Nishiyama, trapped right in the middle, just trying to meet everyone's expectations.
So here's the crucial point. It is so easy to just label this a lone wolf crime. You know, one greedy guy, case closed. But the story forces us to a much more uncomfortable conclusion, that this was a structural failure. A tragedy created by an entire environment that demanded a hero and then refused to look at the real cost.
And this brings us full circle, right back to that car sinking into the dark waters of the Tsushima Sea. See, his death wasn't really an ending. It was a powerful and deeply tragic metaphor for the whole entire situation.
Just think about that for a second. With Nishiyama gone, the problem seemed to be solved, right? But the argument here is that his death was almost a convenience. It provided the perfect cover, allowing the system that created him in the first place to just quietly submerge its own failures, leaving all those dangerous fundamental problems completely unresolved.
So the sinking car, it really becomes the central thesis. What truly sank to the bottom of the sea that day wasn't just a man. It was the truth of the scandal, it was the collective responsibility of the whole system, and it was all those uncomfortable questions that nobody really wanted to answer.
So as you can probably tell, this story offers zero easy answers. Instead, it leaves us with these lingering, really powerful questions that apply far, far beyond one small island in Japan. You know, when we create a hero, who's responsible for them? And are we, in our own lives, unknowingly part of a system that's pushing someone to their absolute breaking point?
And ultimately, that's the final gut punch.
This whole account, it forces us to turn the mirror on ourselves. It makes us ask, what critical issues, what uncomfortable truths, in our own workplaces, our organizations, or even our own communities are we allowing to just sink, silently and conveniently, right beneath the surface?